This morning, it is our privilege to have a special guest and friend of mine, Joe Amaral, to come. And he's going to share the word today. And how many of you have heard of or creeped him? I'm just kidding. On Facebook. How many of you guys have never heard of Joe Amaral? Let me see your hand. How many have? All right. Good. So about, 60-40 split. So that is awesome. Well, Joe is a great guy. I trust him. And so you can relax, take a breath, and he's going to share with you from his heart, and which is God's heart. So, Joe, come on up and give him a good Lakeview welcome, would you?
Thank you. Good morning. Oh, come on, that was pathetic. Good morning. Okay, that's better. Well, it's great to be here. I've been to Alberta many, many times over the years in the Edmonton area, but this is my first time to Bonnyville, so thank you to Pastors Wayne and team and the church for inviting us to be here and to share with you. And today I'm going to share a message that I think everybody needs to hear. Maybe it's not the message you want to hear, but it's the message you're going to hear. And sometimes, it's easier to preach a message that everybody wants to hear. But I didn't fly all the way in from Toronto just for that. So I'm going to hopefully encourage you, inspire you a little bit this morning, challenge you, push you outside of your comfort zone a little bit, because a lot of us are way too comfortable. And so I'm hoping that what I share with you today about not just what I teach, but what I've been doing with my own life is going to be an encouragement to you. It's been a minute since I've seen you guys. I think it was in Northern Ontario, the last time that we were together many, many moons ago. And so a few weeks ago, Pastor Dwayne got a hold of me and said, if you're ever, in the Bonnyville area, as one tends to be. I said, well, I don't know if I'm ever in the area, but I would totally make myself available to be in the area. And he said, hey, come out and share with our people. And so I'm glad to be able to do that today. So I'm gonna introduce a topic this morning that some of you are gonna look at each other for a second, and the pain will only last for 30 seconds. It will eventually subside, and then you'll love me and think I'm amazing, okay? So this morning, I want to talk about a book that I just wrote. I've been privileged to write a few, but this last one is really it's the one that really has fired me up, and it's gotten a lot of attention, not just because of the title, but because of the subject matter. So this morning, I'm going to talk about something called Get Off Your Ash. So I want you to look at the person beside you. This is the most fun you're going to have in church all week. And say, get off your ash. Okay, some of you said that with way too much boldness. I might be coming, Pastor Dwayne. But what in the world is get off your ash all about? Of course, it's cheeky, it's a play on words, but there's so much more than just a fun title. Ash, as we know it in the scriptures, always represents loss and discomfort. And this whole book is rooted in the book of Job. Job is a man who had everything, and then a few moments later, he had nothing. He lost everything. And I could do a whole sermon on that. Maybe we'll do that one day, but not today, where all these messengers line up, and it's a symphony of tragedy, and everyone is worse than the last, and it escalates, and finally he loses all of his business, all of his product, all of his animals, his workers, and all 10 of his children are killed at one time in one house by a freak wind. And the Bible says that Job cut himself, but then sat on ash. And I say that it wasn't just any ash, but this ash represented personal loss, because in that pile of ash, there was a lot of anger at God for what had just happened. There was a lot of shame because he was a big shot. In fact, Job said to God, he said, "Don't you know who I am?" He said, "I was the eyes of the blind. I was the legs of the lame. How dare you let this happen to me?" We've all had that Job moment. Lord, I'm way too good for any of this to happen to me. And we know that in the days of Job, that losing 15,000 animals and children, there was no way you could bury them all, so they would burn their dead, including their children. And think about it for a moment. How does Job get enough ash to make a pile big enough that a grown man can sit on it? Imagine, it's the animals, it's his children, it's his business, everything he's worked his life for is there, and he just sits on that pile of ash. And we're told that for 40 chapters, Job he whines and he whines and he whines. But God, how could you? But why could this happen? Why do bad things happen to good people? But then we get to the end of the book, and the Bible says in the end that God restores to Job twice what he had, and that the second half of his life was greater than the first. Everybody loves that part. But he had to get off his ash in order for that to happen. He had to get outside of that pain that he had identified with for so long. It's so comfortable sitting in pain, actually, you know that? It's comfortable sitting in that which we know, even though it's hurtful, because at least we know that pain and we're not sure what's around the corner. And so Job gets off his ash and God completely changes his life. And that's the word this morning. And you can say it in different ways. Get outside your comfort zone. God gave me the illustration of Job. And this morning, I want to show you what a life can look like. If you're willing to get off that ash, if you're willing to deal with that pain, that hurt, that shame, what are people going to say about you if they find out what you did? If they know what you went through, are they still going to think good things of you? And I had to go through this personally. And while I was at the height of my career, the peak of my success, I was sitting on the biggest pile of ash you could imagine. There was so much shame because of what happened to me when I was younger. There was so much hurt because God had, I thought, allowed this thing to happen to me. But then I decided to say yes. I decided to seek discomfort. I decided to try something new, to pursue the dream that God had put in my heart, and that's why I'm here today. You don't come to Bonnyville, Alberta, unless you're willing to get off your ash and get it on a plane and fly halfway across the country and hopefully spur people. Guys, I want you to leave here, man, with whatever dream that you've had in your heart, that you're going to take a step towards making that dream happen. Because failing is better than not trying. Let me say that again. Failing at something is better than never have tried and never knowing what would have taken place. That's the biggest regret anyone can have. And so I want to talk about these moments that we have in our life that shape us. And that moment causes another moment, and it's a ricochet effect. And I would wonder, if I were to ask you today, has there been a moment in your life that you can look back on and you say, that's where it all changed? Good and bad. Remember the moment you saw that person you knew you were going to marry? Remember that house you knew you wanted? Remember, whatever it is, we've all had moments in our lives. I'm going to share a few moments this morning that we're going to walk through and see what God will do if you say yes. I thought, God, everything that you're going to hear today would never have happened if I didn't say yes to the moment. And I don't want anybody here to ever experience that. So the first moment that I remember that changed my life was in 1987. I was 17 years old. I'm a kid of the 80s. I grew up in a non-Christian, background. And when I was 15 in 1985, I started going to church because I'm a good kid, and my mom wanted me to go, so I went for her. But these kids were weird. They didn't smoke. Nobody drank. They weren't swearing. I'm like, what is wrong with these kids? And I remember thinking that, and one of the guys when I was 17 said to me, hey, I know that you like heavy music. And I said, yeah. And they said, I want to give you a cassette tape. You guys remember cassette tapes? Okay, whoever knows what a cassette tape is a candidate to win Oldest Dad. And they said, hey, there's this Christian rock band called Striper. Anybody remember that name? Yeah. That was like awesomely enthusiastic. Now you have to remember, I grew up listening to Iron Maiden, Ozzy Osbourne, Black Sabbath, and all this kind of stuff. And I went to a youth group and they said, here's the new Amy Grant cassette. Hey, God bless her, she's a sweetie. But Amy just wouldn't cut it. And someone tried to give me a Gaithers videotape. I said, oh no, sweetie, it's not gonna work. And I remember going home. On Thursdays at 4 o'clock, there was something on Much Music called the Power Hour. And every Thursday at 4 o'clock, it was just 1 hour of heavy metal. No Cyndi Lauper, no Michael Jackson, no Duran Duran. That was all the 80s. This was 1 hour of heavy stuff. And if you remember in 1987, there was no PVR. If you missed a show, you missed it. There was no repeat. So no matter what, I had to be home at 4 o'clock on Thursday because all the heavy stuff was going to come on, right? So I'm watching the show. Yeah, there's my band. Yeah, there's my band. And then they said, hey, we have a special treat today. There's a heavy metal band called Striper, a Christian rock band called Striper, and here they are. And I said, what? I just heard about this band at youth group on Friday last week. And so it starts, and this Bible verse comes up, Isaiah 53:5, by his stripes we are healed. And then it was like spandex and long hair and cross earrings and eyeliner and makeup and lipstick and rock and roll and strobe lights. And I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And I remember being so touched that I went to, does anybody remember Towers? The department store. This is before Walmart, before Zellers. There was a store called Towers. Maybe it's an Ontario thing, I don't know. And I went and I bought the album. Not today, like where they reissue albums, right? Like, I mean, remember you bought an album and it had the sleeve inside with all the lyrics printed on them? And so I'm listening along to this band and they're singing, God's the rock that makes me roll. You can have his power in your soul. You don't need drugs to have a good time. And I'm like, what? I remember saying, that's what the pastor said on Sunday, but the way they say it, it impacts me. And at 17 years old, without a pastor, without a church service, I got down on my knees and I said, I want to serve the God that these guys serve. And at 17, I said yes to Jesus in my bedroom, and that was a moment. And I remember going to youth group and telling my youth pastor, hey, I accepted Jesus. I got saved. They're like, wow, who led you to the Lord? I said, Striper. And they said, no, they're from the devil. No. I said, oh, so the devil led me to Jesus. Cool. So the devil told me to go to Bible college and preach the gospel all around the world. So you know what's amazing? That was 17. Fast forward 30-something years later, and today I'm the band's pastor. If you can't tell, I'm a guy with no hair. That's all their original hair, and they're in their late 50s. It's unbelievable. But that was a moment, and I knew that something had happened in my life. And then just a few years later, on December 8th, 1990, I had another moment when I married Karen, and this year is going to make our 32nd year of marriage. And that's a moment. God put us together and brought us together and has caused us to live this incredible life. And then a few years after that, I had another moment in 1995 when our firstborn was born. Caitlin, who's been married for almost 6 years now. She's a nurse. Her husband is a PhD of chemistry. I don't know what he does. I just smile when he talks. He's an amazing young man. And anybody here who has kids, know that's a moment that changes your life. They say your life will never be the same again. Neither will your sleep. Right? Then a couple of years after that, another moment when our son Daniel was born. And now Daniel is serving in youth ministry in Eastern Canada on Cape Breton Island in a place called Glace Bay, Nova Scotia. And having them was a moment that changed my life. And I'm building. Because the next major moment came in 2002 when I went to Israel for the first time. Now, has anybody ever been to Israel before? Let me see your hands. Okay, just a few of you. How many have not been to Israel but would like to go to Israel? Okay, a lot of hands. Okay, have I got a deal for you? Part of the reason why we decided to come out here in talking with Pastor Dwayne was that the church really wanted to do something next year about taking a tour and going to Israel. And he saw that I had posted, I'm finally, now that COVID has settled and you can actually set a date and go, and vaccination requirements are gone and testing is gone, it's open and everybody can go. We said, hey, we're taking a tour next May. And he said, Joe, we'd love to hop on that tour, so come and share it with our people. So in the back, please, they're at the product table, there's little brochures there about the tour, the price, the date. It's May 2023. Grab a copy, look at it. If you have any questions, you can ask myself, talk to Pastor Dwayne. He can ask me the questions. But it's one of those places that you go to that really changes the way you read the Bible. I've been to a lot of places in my life. I've been to, well over 50 countries. I've flown everywhere. But there's nothing like being in Israel. Standing on Mount Carmel, where Elijah called down the fire of God, and right behind Mount Carmel is the Valley of Armageddon. I've had falafels in the Valley of Armageddon. Can you say that? Well, you can if you come to Israel next year. But this is a moment that a friend captured from me. This is a beautiful picture to look at, but it's very hard for me because I had so much more hair. Oh, God. But that's the tomb of Jesus. And so in behind is the empty tomb. And you go in, and it's a dual chamber. It was for a husband and wife initially because it belonged to Joseph of Arimathea. And when you go inside, you can see where they had his body laid out, and you can see where they cut a little place for the head and a little place for the feet. I remember being in the tomb of Jesus going, this is incredible. Like Jesus, the Son of God, here in this room. And I remember after spending some time reflecting and praying, and I was coming out, and they've put like reinforced doors now, and they've made it a little more tourist friendly. But the tomb's the tomb. And I remember grabbing onto the side of it to come out, to step out. And when I grabbed that side, I thought, oh my God, Jesus came out of this tomb. I got to tell you, it's a moment. That was 2002. That was 20 years ago. But I can close my eyes and still remember what I felt in that moment. And that was a moment that changed me. It put me on a course to learn more about the historical Jesus of Nazareth. And I've spent the last 20 years writing and researching and traveling and doing everything I've done because of that one little moment. They say one moment can break you, but the truth is one moment can also make you. But you got to say yes. You have to get off that pile of ash. You have to be willing to say yes to that moment. Even though when I went in 2002, there was 5 suicide bombings a week in Jerusalem. It was not a good time to do tour promotion. Our slogan was, Jerusalem, it's a blast. Not good. Not good. The next moment came. The next big moment, I had a chance to host for 100 Huntley Street. I was able to be on staff at some, large churches, and we had a very great international ministry, and that was all amazing, and God used all of that. But the next major thing for me was when I went to a country called Liberia. Now, how many people, besides my friend from Liberia today, knows where Liberia is on the map? One person. That's one more than most churches. Okay? So here we are. Where are we? Is Edmonton on the map there somewhere? Here? So we're up here somewhere, right? Okay, so you fly all the way across Africa and you come all the way down here, all the way down here. That little green space on the map, that's a country called Liberia. And this is the continent of Africa. Here we have little Liberia, a country I'd never heard about like most of you. Didn't know a single thing about it. Never mind not knowing where it was. I didn't know anything about it. But now I know it's part of West Africa, and it's a community of less than about 5 million people. And I got an invitation from this guy here. This is a guy named Sam Abel Binse. He's a pastor there. And he started following me on YouTube. And you can always tell when you have a new follower because they go back and like every video you've ever done. So for days I was getting, Sam Abel Binse liked your video. Sam Abel Binse liked your video. This was happening for days. And then he sent me a little note and he said, Pastor Joe, we need this teaching in Liberia. I ignored it and I kept going. Because I get lots of comments. You can't say hello to everybody. That's just how life goes. But it was nagging at me. I said I should respond to this guy. So I wrote back. I was very Canadian. And I said, maybe one day, but I didn't mean it. Can I be honest? So I'm not going to Liberia. I don't even know where it is. I'm going to stand out. I mean, I'm not going. It's like, when you meet somebody at the mall you haven't seen since high school, you're like, oh, we should have a coffee. You're never going to have a coffee. Right? You should come over. Okay, that was 20 years ago, right? So I said, maybe one day, not meaning it at all. Next day, what day? He wrote, what day would you like to come, Pastor Joe? I said, oh, he called my bluff. Yeah, hallelujah. Hallelujah now, but not hallelujah then. I said, oh, shoot, I got to go to Liberia. And I remember doing some research on it. I learned about it. It was a country that had gone through back-to-back civil wars. I mean, the infrastructure was decimated. There was rampant poverty and corruption. And there was all these reasons not to go. And he said, Pastor Joe, it's not that the people here are stupid. It's that nobody will come here to teach because there's no money in it. You have to pay for your own flight. You have to pay for your own hotel. We'll feed you some local rice and greens if your stomach can handle it. Nobody's going to buy your book for $20. They make $30 a month. Imagine spending 2/3 of your salary to buy one book. It's not going to happen. So I went on Facebook, and we were in a charity then, and I said, hey, my son and I would love to go and visit these people. Would anybody be willing? We need about $4,000 for 2 tickets. Within 36 hours, we had raised the $4,000 on Facebook. Next thing you know, my son and I are on a plane, and we are on our way to Liberia, and we took 7 suitcases with us because we were going to visit a school. And I remember bringing, toothpaste and toothbrushes and soap and shirts and all kinds of stuff. Soccer balls, not hockey pucks, sorry. I know you guys like hockey out here, but soccer is the game of Africa. And I remember landing and not knowing if this guy was going to be there to meet me. How many have heard of Nigerian princes calling and writing for money? So this African guy says, yeah, come, we'll meet you at the airport. I said, we'll see. I honestly had no idea, but when I got there, they were all wearing T-shirts, welcome to Liberia, Pastor Joe. And they had bongos, and they played me all the way to the car. It was amazing. And I couldn't see anything because there's no electricity outside of the airport area. And there was no lights. It was pitch black, but I knew the roads were bad because we were doing this. The whole way, I got up in the morning. They took me out to the church site. And this is a very typical side road in Liberia, just little dirt roads. The main road would run along here. Then you just take all these little side roads. And this building here was the original building I went to. This is the church in the back. And this is the school out front. And these are all the kids from the neighborhood because I'd never seen a white guy with a drone before. I was like, I don't know what over there. And I remember starting to go throughout the city a little bit. And we met this kid here named Mitchell. And Mitchell was a quiet kid. And they were playing soccer just out in an open field. And Mitchell was just kind of by himself. And nobody was really talking to him. And they would push him and he would fall over and he would cry. And, the dad in me said, hey, leave the kid alone. And I went and I grabbed him and I picked him up. And how you see him there on the right is how I know Mitchell today. He will not let me go every time I go. But I found out that he was born deaf and nonverbal. And that's why he had such a hard time hanging out with the other kids. But I just loved on him and I hung out with him. And I became his protector. When Pastor Joe was around, nobody messed with Mitchell. They would look at doing something, Mitchell would look at me, the kids would look at me, and they would walk away. And so at the end of the first 3-week trip, we were getting ready to go, and he chased after me, and he was calling me. I won't mimic his call, but he didn't have a voice, so he was making sounds, trying to get my attention. And he was going, come, come, come. So I followed him to the back of the soccer field. And when I got there, I saw this. He had written my name in the sand. And the principal of the school came over because it was right across from the school, and he said, we had no idea that he had intelligence. But look what happens if you say yes to a moment. You see a child being bullied. You see a child who's left out. You act on it, and you watch what God does. And now today, this is just a few weeks ago, Mitchell is one of the coolest kids in the school. Look at his face now. Come on. But this is what happens when you say yes to that moment. So I came back from Liberia, and the Lord gave me a vision. I'm not a vision guy, okay? This is extra personal for him because he's from Liberia. He just happens to be in Edmonton right now. He knows. And when I came back, the Lord spoke to me and said, I want you to buy 5 acres of land. And I said, Lord, it's like, $40,000, dollars. I don't have $40,000. So I did this. I just came and I started to share with people, hey, I think I want to buy 5 acres on the main road, and God's given me a vision to build a community. And so after 3 services, we raised almost $50,000 Canadian. I went and we bought this 5-acre piece of property. And here it is from the other side looking back at the land. You know the place, Ben, very, very well. And God gave us a name, and it's called the Community of Hope. And we're called Hope for Liberia, so everything has hope in its name. It's a hope. The Community of Hope is now an actual, It's a landmark. That's what it is. So when you need a taxi ride, you say, oh, it's 2 side streets past the Community of Hope. Yeah, it's awesome. We're on Google Maps. We're in Waze. If you type in Community of Hope, Liberia, it'll take you a long time from here, but we're on there. And so I said, I want to build a community center, a church, something, because this is the main road. This goes all the way from the capital. You have to go past this stretch of land if you're going anywhere in the country. And so we wanted to put a church there. And this was June in 2020. Now, I don't know if anything happened out here in March 2020. Nothing? Everything was fine? Okay. Well, in Ontario, everything changed in March 2020. We started the ministry in January 2020. 2 months later, the world shuts down. I can't travel. I can't go anywhere. I can't tell anybody about what we want to do. But God speaks to us, and he said, you said you wanted to build a church and a community center. I said, yeah, Lord. He said, you have a little bit of money in the bank. Emphasis on little. So my wife and I prayed about it, and we said, let's build a community center. So we decided to fund stage 1 and build this church/community center. Right? We're very thankful for that. It was very simple, but it was a place of worship. We own the land. We own the building. No one can ever take it away from us. It's wonderful. Well, then I wanted to build phase 2 of the community center. I want to build a school. I want to build an orphanage. And again, I don't know about here, but in Liberia, things cost money. And we needed a lot of money to finish the building. And then, what was it? On January 2nd, 2021, I got a request from somebody in the UK, and they said, we'd like to have a Zoom chat with you. And I said, I don't want to have a Zoom chat with people from the UK. I mean, maybe they saw one of, the TV episodes and they want to ask a million questions. Then you get stuck. I'm just being honest. And my wife said, Joe, they don't have your phone number. They don't have your email. There's that red button at the bottom of Zoom that says end. Yeah. Oops. Yeah. So I went in with my mouse in hand, ready to hit end. Well, within seconds, you could tell they were a very wonderful, strong, faithful couple. And to make a very long story short, they said, what do you need? They said, well, we need at least $50,000 to finish stage 2. And they said, we can do that. I said, you can do what? Oh, we're going to send you $50,000. Give us all the banking info, the wiring information. And 5 days later, $50,000 showed up in the bank account. And we built phase 2. Now, you need to understand that in Liberia, nobody pays attention until you put on the roof. Because anybody can build a foundation and throw some blocks up, that's cheap. But when you do a roof, now you're going to put in a septic system, you're going to run plumbing, you're going to run electrical. Now it's you're serious. People would pull off the road and say, what are you doing? What is this? And we started to get the attention of the community. So we built phase 2. We have offices and apartments. There's all kinds of wonderful stuff there. There's another drone shot of the facility. And I said, Lord, we want to do a nice job here. We don't want it just to be another place. This is the community of hope. And so we were able to finish it really nice on the inside. That's a beautiful little place. Now, why am I showing you this? Because we said yes to a moment. People said, Joe, you follow David Maines on 100 Huntley Street. You had 1 million people every week listening to the show. They said, you're pastoring the largest church in the country. Why would you leave that? Why would you leave the prestige of this church and that ministry and this thing? And I could have stayed where it was comfortable, because it was comfortable, it was easy. I said, Lord, I want you to give me a ministry that I can't do without you. That's a really dangerous prayer. It's like the missionary who says, Lord, don't send me to Africa. My prayer should have been, Lord, do not send me to Hawaii. It should have been the prayer. And so we said yes. And then a few months later, I woke up and I went to my dear wife. I said, Karen, chickens. She's like, oh, what now? She says, I think we should buy 500 chickens. We should build a chicken coop. It's a great way of sustainability, chickens for the protein and the eggs. So next thing you know, we ended up buying 500 chickens. This is the story of my life. Everywhere I go, I'm surrounded by chicks. Look at that. That is a good joke. That's a good joke. It only works in some contexts. And so the chicks started to grow, and the chicks turned into chickens. And then on one trip when I was there, it just so happened the very day I landed, the very first egg was laid. And when things are going well, you can get about 7,000 eggs a month. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. And so we have the chicken coop there. And one of my favorite things to do is to eat Liberian food. And when you eat with the people in their village, at their table, or on the floor outside their hut, that's when you become part of their tribe. I remember this day, that's when they changed my name. From Pastor Joe to Pastor Kole. Sounds cool, right? Kole. Too bad it doesn't mean anything cool, it just sounds cool. Kole means the man with bright skin. Pastor, white guy. I said, yeah. I remember this was the height of COVID, and you're dipping your hand into the bowl, You're dipping it, you're eating it, and everybody's doing it, and then you're putting your hand back in. I mean, I crossed everything. I did it. Everything. I said, Lord. But that was a moment when I said yes to put my comfort zone to the side. Say, Lord, it'd be so much easier to go to a Wendy's, right? It'd be so much easier to go to a Montana's Outback or something. But say, Lord, I want to be your hands and feet so they can see your face and your heart. And so we have a ministry going through the villages, and we reach out to hundreds of kids. We feed them. We bring them rice. We bring them clothing. And then this little sweetheart stole my heart. This is Lopu. She's 5, and she is such a little weasel. She has me wrapped around her finger, and she knows it. Pastor Dwayne, I'm sure you know what that's like with 3 girls in the house, 4 in the house. And so we talked to her mom and dad and got their permission to remove her from the village, and she's staying with the family. And now she attends our school, which we'll talk about in a minute. And now she's in the top 5% of the class. I mean, just everywhere you go, the kids, they just melt your heart. I love them. They love me. We started to dig wells all around the community. The picture on the right there of the children playing in water, that's normal here, but it's not in Liberia. Water is for drinking. Water is for cooking. And when you have to walk an hour and a half with bloodied feet on rocky roads, you don't play in the water. And now to see these wells popping up in villages around the area and seeing kids play in clean, cold, living water, guys, I got to tell you, I'll never forget the first pump and seeing the water come out and people rushing. What are you doing? It's hitting the floor. They would come with containers to catch it. And again, it's because we said yes. And so we're starting to see these pop up all around the country. Let me fast track a bit because my flight's not till Tuesday morning, so I'm good. Yeah, so over the next 3 hours, I'm going to share. So this is called the FDA Blind Community. FDA is a junction. Remember those side roads I was showing you? They're called junctions. And so there's one called FDA, and there's a blind community. Exclusively, every person who lives there is blind. And we take canes over to them. We bring water. We bring rice. We bring whatever we can to help them out. And, of course, they can't see me. So they say, Pastor Joe, talk a lot because we need to associate the voice with a name. So I won't tell them that I'm in the country even. We'll just show up and I'll go, hello, Pastor Joe. I mean, it's amazing how they can identify you by your voice, even though they haven't, heard from you in a year. And so the kids love to come around. This little sassy one, that's Princess. She's such a little sweetie. And her brother is here in the blue. And so what they love to do is they love to compare skin colors. It's like a game. And our hair is different than African hair. And so ours is in this coarse, so it falls down. And so they love to come. And I felt like a unicorn at a petting zoo. It was awesome. And the little boy there wearing blue, he started tucking at my shirt. And he pulled me aside. His name is Prince. I said, what's up? And he said, I want to go to your school. Right? Because they couldn't go to school because the parents needed them to guide them around the streets. So they were like their icing dogs. So they needed the children to go to the street to hustle, they call it, to beg, to make enough money to hopefully get 2/3 of a cup of rice to feed your kids for the day. And I said, I can't say yes to him in front of everybody because I'll have to say yes to the 60 kids that are in the school. Hold that thought, okay? We're going to come back to it. I'm just going to have to fast track here a little bit. Here's the kids in front of that. Remember that original school building I showed you the drone shot of? Can anybody find me? Instead of where's Waldo, where's the white guy? Far right? And they were giving me a tour of the school. And this is just, I'm not trying to show you, bad stuff, but this is what the schools are just like this. They're, sometimes concrete flooring, mostly a little bit of dirt. They use the bamboo leaves to make up these little makeshift walls to divide the classrooms. Very, very simple, desks and chairs. And I said, Lord, they need a school, right? I mean, like a nice school with qualified teachers and just a really good school. So remember my friends in the UK? So I decided to Zoom them this time, see how they like it. I said, hey, we want to build a school. They're like, that's awesome. We want to see you build a school. How much do you need? I said, $300,000. And they said, we can do that. And over the next 8 months, they wired $366,000 to build a state-of-the-art school for the country of Liberia on the main road. That's what that second building is in the back here. And out front, there's going to be a basketball court. This weekend, Ben and I were looking at playgrounds. We want to put playgrounds here on the side. There's a big soccer field out back here. And so we wanted to do it to a higher standard. We wanted to make it something that people would be proud to send their children to, that would be something just powerful in the community. So we wanted to finish the inside really, really nice. And so we fixed it up all nice, black and white and gray. Isn't that nice? That's a nice school. Now remember, this is what their classrooms looked like before, remember? So now their classrooms look like this. And it's so much better when you fill it with kids. Hey, do you guys remember Prince? I want to go to your school. Well, I came back home. I put out a post on Facebook. You know that Facebook is for more than just arguing with your friends about your beliefs? Did you know that? I was amazed. And I said, hey, we have 60 kids at this blind community, and it's like $60 Canadian to send them to school for a year. 2 people responded, and next thing you know, all 60 kids, including Prince, are now attending full-time our school. And this here on May 27th, just a couple of weeks ago, he won the spelling bee. That's Prince on the right. He won the spelling bee for his grade for the entire district of Careysburg. And the competition was held at our school because we're the only one that can hold 700 kids at one time. Now, usually I continue at this point, but there's actually somebody in this room who was there the moment that we commissioned the school and gave it to the community. And so I want to invite my friend Benjamin to come up and share for a few moments about life in Liberia and what Hope for Liberia means to the community. But you have to come up here. You can't sit there. Right? Come on. Say welcome. Come.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a blessing to be up here today.
It's okay.
Sorry about that. Thank you for having me. It's a blessing to be up here today. I didn't think in my wildest dream that I would be in Canada and talking about Liberia, right?
On Father's Day.
On Father's Day, right? So a brief history of Liberia that a lot of people don't know about. Liberia was the first country to get independence in Africa in 1847. 20 years later, Canada got her independence, right? So Liberia was founded by free slaves that came from the U.S. in the 1800s. Our flag is a complete replica of the U.S. flag. The only difference is they have 52 stars, and we have 1. Careysburg is named in honor of a U.S. state, Careysburg, or U.S. city, Careysburg. So in Liberia, we have Maryland, we have Virginia, we have Louisiana, and a lot of other American cities too in Liberia, right? Our currency was the US dollar from 1847 to 1985, right? Then we had a period where we had a brief period of civil war. When we were growing up, there was a lot of good stuff going on in Liberia, right? So looking at those kids there, I see myself in those kids, right? We've had a lot of American missionaries coming to Liberia because it's typical, because of the American influence, even the Pledge of Allegiance. The only difference is we say, I pledge allegiance to the Republic of Liberia, one nation, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. The Americans say, we pledge allegiance to America, right? That's how heavy the influence is. But we have never had a missionary to come to Liberia to empower the people in a way that is sustainable. What am I talking about? I'm talking about Pastor Joe, right? I didn't know Pastor Joe was in Liberia. So during the Civil War, I had an opportunity to come to Canada as a French-speaking immigrant to Quebec. I learned French in school from 4th grade to 12th grade. So the system of school in Liberia is the same as in the US and everything else. You got the grade system. The Africans consider us, a lot of Africans consider us not to be Africans because of the different system we had. We were not colonized or anything else, right? So long story short, I hear that there's a Canadian guy, a white Canadian guy, that built this place. In fact, before I go to my farm, I have a farm, 90 acres of land, but I have to pass through the community of Hope before I get to my farm.
That's right. Yeah.
My wife is from South Africa. She decided to come to Liberia too. So first thing is she's very observant. She's like, Ben, what's going on? Who's this person building this place? I said, I have no idea, but we have to find out. And somebody comes up to me and said, there's this white Canadian guy. They said, first he asked me, where are you from, Ben, Canada? I'm like, yeah. There's this white Canadian guy out here. He has a mission he's building down there. You want to go and meet him? I'm like, no. He's like, why not? I said, I don't know. I'm busy. I don't have time to meet him, right? Anyway, long story short, I met Pastor Joe. Pastor Joe and I talked. And he told me about his vision for building the Hope community. And like I said, Pastor Joe is just trying to be modest. When we talk about poverty, when we talk about hardship, when we talk about people not having hope, this is what we're talking about, right? There's this lady, the story that he didn't tell you about. She was blessed by getting a sewing machine from Pastor Joe and them. Today, she's able to open a shop, and she's producing these clothes that Pastor Joe is wearing and other clothes in the community. This is a local attire from Liberia that Pastor Joe is wearing, right? But he's doing it in a way that has never been done before. A lot of people will come and just enable the people to be dependent on the aid that is coming in versus empowering the people to be able to take care of themselves, right? And that's why I decided to give it to Pastor Joe. But Pastor Joe has a habit of just making me cry. No, it's true. So one day I'm going on the farm, and I stop by to see Pastor Joe, because I make these cool track suits and everything with Canada on it. On Canada Day, when Canada was 150 years old, I made these t-shirts, souvenir t-shirts. And at the Churchill Park in Edmonton, I sold t-shirts for $16,000 on that day, right? So I keep them. Yeah? Thank you. So I kept them, and I gave it to people that mean a lot to me. So based on the work that Pastor Joe was doing in Liberia and for the community of Hope, I'm like, I have something for you, and I gave it to Pastor Joe. And I'm going on the farm, we talked. I parked my truck, and I'm like, Pastor Joe, I have a tree for you. So what drew me to Pastor Joe is, Pastor Joe has the same vision that I have for Liberia, but he has a bigger platform. And his passion is even more than a natural-born citizen from Liberia that had the opportunity to come to Canada. So every time I get home, that puzzles me to be better, right? So how can I be able to replicate the good things that we have in Canada in Liberia? We have the smallest population in Africa, but we have a lot of land. And the land is very fertile, but the people are lazy. They don't want to work, right? So I decided, if we can have cantaloupe and everything else in Canada, how come we can't take this to Liberia and grow it? So I decided, my wife and I decided we're going to take a couple of Canadian fruits or North American fruits and take it to Africa, right? And then we planted some pomegranates, and they're growing really nice. We have them all on the farm. And I got to Pastor Joe, I was like, I have a tree for you. And he was ready to make me cry again. He said, what kind of tree do you have for me, Ben? I said, I have a pomegranate tree for you. He stood for a minute and said, do you know the significance of this tree? I'm like, no. He said, this tree has a biblical significance. I said, I didn't know that. He said, I wrote my will a couple of days ago. And I decided that I want my ashes to be buried on this mission, but I was looking for a tree. What a coincidence. And she said, I'm going to name this tree Liberty. And he planted the tree in the mission. That tree is still there today. He sends me a picture every now and again of that tree. When we had the program to dedicate the school, Pastor Joe called me. We were the only two Canadians there, right? It's me and Pastor Joe with the maple leaf, and we had everybody else with the Canadian flag waving it because they were all excited. But this project was able to bring together the country in a way I've never seen in my life. We had a member of the Liberian Armed Forces raising the Canadian flag, the Liberian flag, and the Israeli flag at the same time. I've never seen that before. Like I said, there's a huge American influence, but we don't have a lot of Canadian influence. Right now, I think it's only me and Pastor Joe and somebody else, right? So long story short, Pastor Joe has done something or is doing something that's unprecedented. I didn't even know about the orphanage. I knew we were going to play basketball because there's this new awesome basketball court, state of the art that he's building right in front of the school, so we're going to play basketball, but I didn't know he was going to be building an orphanage, right? And then I were in Liberia, then I flew back, because during the COVID I wasn't here, I went home, and then COVID started, I wasn't able to come back to Canada. So my wife was like, well, just work on the farm and do other things that we want to do, then you don't have to come to Canada. But it's been my dream. You see those kids that Pastor Joe showed you? How were those kids? My mom had 6 boys, imagine. 6 boys in Africa where there's no hope. 6 boys in Liberia where it's difficult to find your next meal. My dad worked for the Lutheran Church and had a huge American influence with a lot of American missionaries. That's the only way we're able to go to school. So he worked for 32 years, but he didn't get paid because we had to go to school and the money was deducted from his salary. Sending 6 boys wasn't easy. And he had this famous saying that, I don't have no wealth that I'm going to write because I don't have no property to give you guys. The only thing I can give you is education. Right? And that's what he said. And today, 5 out of the 6 boys, I got 4 brothers in America, 2 in the military, and my mom is in the U.S., even though she's blind, and my dad passed away. But his dream for us is coming true. So why am I saying this? In October, I'm going to be 50 years old. I got 4 daughters, 2 sons. I'm going to have my 3rd grandchild in England. I got 2 daughters in England, 1 in Scotland and 1 in London. I wasn't supposed to be here today. They have Liberians that are richer in Liberia that wanted the kids to come overseas but didn't have the opportunity to do that. But that seed that was planted in us by our dad is the same seed that Pastor Joe and the Community of Hope is planting on a bigger scale in Liberia today, and that's what makes me emotional. If I had the opportunity to be able to do that, I would have done that, but I don't. So when I become emotional, it makes me happy to see someone who have the ability and have the passion to be able to bring a lot of people out of poverty like God was able to do for me. If I had the ability to do that, I would have done that, right? Pastor Joe could have sat in Ontario and what was he looking for? The first thing I asked him, how did you come to Liberia on the first day? Right? So I just want to thank you guys, and I really want to thank Pastor Joe in a special way. And when he opened the school, he was so emotional he couldn't speak. I had to speak on his behalf when we opened the school in Liberia. And since then, it's just been awesome. And the people look forward to Pastor Joe going to Liberia every time when he's coming. The people are the very good people, but they don't have the opportunity that a lot of people have, right? So I just want to thank you in this public manner, Pastor Joe, and I just want to thank you, Pastor Dwayne, and the entire church for having us. I guess a lot of people were confused this morning. We see these 2 guys coming in. We don't know why they're here and this and that. But we just want to appreciate you guys for giving us the time and having us today. Thank you very much.
Amen. It's not very often, or it's never happened, that I was speaking in a city where one of my friends from Liberia happened to be. And I could tell you about Liberia and what it's like and how difficult it can be, but who better than somebody who was born and raised in the country? And sustainability is what it's all about. Let me just take 5 minutes and wrap this up. I know that we have things that we need to get to. One of the things we believe in is empowering the local people, because Pastor Joe is going to die one day. And then what? It all falls apart? No. You have to work yourself out of a job. So we're thinking 50 years ahead. What do you do? So I'm pleased to announce that starting in August of this summer, the Hope Institute is launching, which is a vocational training center. And these 10 courses are going to be offered for those who can't afford to go to university. They're going to be learning hands-on practical skills. So we're very excited for the launch of this coming in August in just a couple of months. We have 275 kids at the school. We feed them breakfast and lunch every day. We cook everything on site. That's a very expensive endeavor. And you can see how happy she is about her food. We've been able to secure a school bus, and we pick up the kids every day. Remember Prince and those 60 kids at the blind community? We pick them up every morning, bring them into school, educate them, feed them, send them back home. And the only thing better than one bus is getting 2 buses. And it's been amazing to see how the Lord has just been growing this ministry. And the last thing I want to focus on this morning is I had the vision to buy the land. Then we had the vision to build the school and the church and for the chickens. And my wife and I have, for 32 years, have been joking, saying, if ministry doesn't work out, let's just buy a farm and plant potatoes for Jesus. That's just a joke. I'm from Toronto. I know nothing about planting, okay? And so just a few weeks ago, guess what we did? We decided to buy a farm. So we have 25 acres of land that we're going to start with. There's 170 available to us. We've been purchasing it at $600 an acre. We're going to be growing all of our own rice and all our own cassava and potatoes and fruits and vegetables. So not only is that going to lessen the monthly bills because we're not buying the food, we're growing it, but then they get to do it. I can just stand back and watch them work and watch them provide for themselves. It gives them such a sense of comfort. And he mentioned the orphanage. Nobody knows about it yet. You got out ahead of me, but that's okay. So we're launching an orphanage, but we're not calling it an orphanage because we have a couple that's going to run it, and they already have 20 kids, 4 natural children and 16 adopted children. And every child is because the mother died at birth. And the babies were left literally in garbage bins. They were left on the steps of hospitals because the shift was over. They closed the hospital and they left with mom dead inside. And so this couple has taken on 16 additional children, and they don't know it yet, but they're going to run the orphanage. And so it's being called the House of Hope. It's not an orphanage because the moment you come in, you're home. Those kids will never have to worry about, oh, will I get adopted? You are home. You're in a loving family. And all those kids are going to get to attend our school that's like 10 feet away from the orphanage. And they just broke ground yesterday. All these pictures are from yesterday. All the blocks arrived at the site, the garage full of cement, the trucks were bringing all the rods and everything that's necessary. And I am just so thankful to the Lord that we get to be a part of this. And I know that you're taking up an offering, as you should, to help this local camp, to restore what was lost in that fire, and give as God leads you to give. And if he speaks to you about getting involved with anything we're doing in Liberia, you come to that back table, you talk to us, and we can get you connected if you want to give. But pray for us. Because all this came out of a moment. A moment. Hey, we need this in Liberia. One day. A moment. Saying yes to that leading. Getting off of that comfortable pile of ash. Getting off of what was known to me and what was familiar and saying, Lord, I'm going to do something that I can't do without you. So I want to pray with you guys that it doesn't matter what age you're at. You can be at the end of your life, the middle of your life. I don't care what season of life you're in. If you have a dream, if you have a passion, I want to pray that God will give you the boldness and the wisdom to be able to step out, to get off that ash and launch out into what he's called you to do. Can I pray for you real quick? Yeah, Father, thank you for this church. Thank you for the platform, for the opportunity to be able to share. Lord, I thank you that you make dreams come true. That you're working in the background. Even when we don't see it, you're already working in the background. You're waiting for us to say yes so very often. More than not, you're already working in the background. You have everything in place, but we got to get off that ash, and we got to say yes to that leading. So Lord, I pray that all over the room today, and anybody who's watching or hearing the sound of my voice today would say, I'm getting off my ash today. I'm saying yes to God. I'm going to say yes to the moment, and I'm going to see where it takes me. So God, bless this church. Bless the pastors, bless the leaders, bless the people. And I pray in Jesus' name that they would continue being a light to this community. And Father, I thank you for this opportunity now. In Jesus' name, amen.